Hey, this is Jerry from Bliz Studio, and what are we going to be doing in this particular tutorial? We are starting something new. We're going to be putting something together that's similar to the mobile roller splat game. So what we're going to do is actually set up a ball that's going to be the base. Then with Playmaker, we're going to be able to use the swipe up, swipe down, left and right to get the ball to move. And we're also going to use Raycast. And Raycast is going to allow us to detect when the ball hits something. So the Raycast casts out a line. When that line hits an object, then we can trigger another action, which is going to stop the ball from moving. So if you're ready to get started, let's go. Okay, so here we're back in Unity. What we're gonna do is create a game similar to Roller Splat. I have my windows all set up. I've gone ahead and went into build settings to make sure that I'm in the iOS format. If you are an Android person, you can put it in Android format and set up the build settings for that. Within the game window, I have personally the iPhone XS window set up, so I know exactly kind of what size I'm looking to build for. I have my actions over here. I've got my Playmaker window set up. I've got my project and hierarchy and my game scene all good to go. Okay. And I started out with the URP project and I just deleted all the base stuff out of there except for the post-processing volume because that's already set up and we can go ahead and utilize that. I've gone ahead and also set up the camera so it's kind of facing down. That gets me set up pretty well with how I want the camera to look, and I can always go and modify it later. But I'm kind of wanting to do more top down on this particular one. And so I've got that all set up, so we're really good to go. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and create a new sphere. Okay, so I've got my sphere. You can see that my camera is kind of looking at it. And what I want to do is to go ahead and tag this. And we can go ahead and just tag it as player because that's what the player, or that's what the user is going to be using to swipe around the game. So we've got player. And so we've tagged that. It has a sphere collider on it. I'm going to go ahead and set is trigger. We're going to be using this trigger a little bit later on. But I'm going to take this cube and make it just a little bit smaller. So let's go, instead of 1 by 1 by 1, I'm going to go ahead and make that 0.8 by 0.8. So let's go 0.8, 0.8, and 0.8. And then I'm also going to then take the sphere collider and make it just a little bit bigger. Okay, so let's zoom in so we can see this. We can see that the green lines here are for the sphere collider. Let me just get off of that. I'm going to bump the radius of this up just a little bit bigger. And the reason I'm doing that is just so I have some space in between the ball and the walls that I'm going to create so that I have room for special effects if I need to, that kind of thing. And I don't want that to be right up against the wall. So I need just a little bit of space. So that's why I made the ball just a little bit smaller. I'm going to make the sphere collider just a little bit bigger to compensate. So it's maybe 0.65. And I think that works pretty good. Now, everything in Unity is based off of units. So 1 unit is the default measurement. That equals 1 meter in real world space. And so I've also installed Pro Grids. And if you don't have Pro Grids, you can download it by going to Package Manager. And then I have Pro Grids already set up here, but if you don't, you can go to the Advanced tab right here, Show Preview Packages, and then if you just type in Pro, you can see that you'll then be able to access Pro Grids. It's a preview package, so it's not there by default. As soon as you enable Preview Packages, you'll have access to it. Okay, so with that set up, I can then set up the grid system, and then when I move an object, like when I move this ball, it's going to move in whatever increments I have here. So this is going to be more for building out the environment than it is for the ball specifically. So when I start setting up walls, I'll set up a wall that's 1 meter by 1 meter, and then I can just duplicate it, and I know it's going to be perfectly aligned because it's going to align to this grid. So I can turn this on and off, but for now I'm just going to leave it on. Cool. So we've got that set up. I want to go ahead and just make this ball just a little bit more fancy, and I'm just going to add a color to it. So what I'm going to do is in my materials, I'm going to go ahead and create a new material. So material, and I'll call this ball mat. And then let's see, what do we want to do? I'm just going to change the color of it to a nice bright red. And then maybe also enable some emission. We'll have that be red as well. And then I want to take that material and apply it to my sphere. There we go. So now we have a nice bright red ball. And it looks a little hazy over here, but that's because we have fog turned on. That's okay. We're going to fix that here in a minute. And then I also want to change my sphere and name this to ball. Okay, so we've got that set up. We can go to our lighting tab. And again, if you don't have this, you can go to window, and then under rendering, you can see lighting settings. That's this tab right here. And then you can go and you can set up how much fog. If there is fog, you can turn that on and off, and that will release the fog. Okay, so the other thing I want to do here real quick before we get into the Playmaker stuff is I want to take my camera. Currently I'm rendering the skybox, which has a gray base and then the sky looking sky, I guess. I want to change the main camera to be just viewing a solid background. So if we select our main camera and then go to environment background, we're going to change from skybox to solid color. And I've chosen this nice bright yellow, which is fun. And then I'm going to end up making the walls white. Cool, so we have that set up. Now let's start working on the ball. All right, so what I'm going to do is instead of applying a Playmaker FSM to the ball, I'm going to try to set everything up in managers. So this is where all my Playmaker FSMs are going to go specifically. So I'm going to go and create an empty game object, call it managers. Yep, got that going. Create one more empty game object inside of that, and we'll call this movement. Okay, so we're going to set our Playmaker FSM on movement, and it's going to then target the ball to move. Okay, all right, so now what is it that we want to do? Well, we want to, if we swipe down, swipe up, swipe left or right, we want our ball to move up, down, left or right. Okay, so let's go ahead and get that set up. So what I'm going to do is with movement selected, I'm going to go ahead and add an FSM, and we'll just call this detect input. Okay, so that's the base of what's happening with this FSM. We want to detect what's happening. So in this case, I'm going to start off with get key down, but we can change this to swipe, or we can also add swipe events. Because I'm just on my computer, I'm just going to use the get key down or get key up event. So in this case, let's just get key down. Okay, so get key down. And what I need to do is to determine what key it is that I want to detect. So in this case, I'm just going to start with the up key. So I select the up arrow. And then I need to send an event. So let's go ahead and create a couple of events real quick. So I'm going to create a swipe up. Now I'm calling this swipe because it's mobile, and eventually it's intended to be swipe events. So I'm going to go ahead and call it swipe, but we're going to use the get key down. So, and I'm going to have one for down, left, and right as well. So swipe down, and then another one for swipe right, and another one for swipe down. Oops, right, left. One of those, there we go. So now I have those set up. So let's go back to our state. Now we can say, hey, if somebody does hit the up key, what do we want to do? Well, we want to send an event called swipe up, okay? And it's saying, hey, you don't have that set up yet on your state. So let's go ahead and just click the red box. It adds it over here for us. Now we can go ahead and drag off of that with the control key or the command key, and now we have a new state. So I'm going to go ahead and call this swipe up. And then now if somebody hits this key, it goes over to the state. We need to determine what we want to happen. Okay, so let's look at the ball real quick. So here's the orientation of the ball. If I move the ball, so let's look at what's happening here in the position. If I move the ball to the back of the screen, oops, let's make sure we've got the right thing selected here. If I move the ball to the back of the screen, it's a positive direction. If I move it towards the player or down the screen, it's a negative direction. So we need to keep track of that. Let me undo that and let's go left and right. So if I move it to the left, it's a negative direction. If I move it to the right, it's a positive direction. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna use a translate. And we want to set up two variables, one that's a positive number and one's a negative number. Because I want all of the different swipe events to just use those two numbers. So let's go ahead and set those variables up real quick. So let's select our movement. We want these variables to be part of this FSM. So I'm going to do a float, and I'm going to call this speed plus. I'll hit add, and then we can go ahead and set what that speed is. I'm going to just set it to be 7, so positive 7. And then I'm also going to create a negative speed, so speed minus, add that, and then I need to say what that number is, and it's going to be a negative 7. Okay, so we've got those two speeds set up. Now, if I ever want to change the speed, as opposed to going into all the different states, going and finding the speeds, I can just go to these two variables and just change those. It makes it way easier. Okay. All right, so what we want to do is if we hit our key down or swipe up, we want our ball to move in a positive direction in the Z axis. Okay, so let's go and translate. Double click that to bring that down. And what is it that we want to translate? Well, we don't want to use the owner because that the owner is the movement. We want to translate the ball. So I'm going to specify game object, drag the ball down. And then what is it we want to move? Again, we're looking down. So we're using our Z index going in and out and our Y or X axis moving left and right. So what I'm going to do is with the Z axis, I'm going to target that positive speed number. Okay, so we know that we're going to move it in a positive speed number. And if you don't have this extra little window right here, if you just click on debug, you can actually see what that variable number is. Okay, so we've got that set up, and we're going to do this per second and every frame. So as long as the ball is on this state, that it's going to continually move that ball. So let's give this a test real quick. So let's hit play. And nothing's going to happen until I hit my get key down up arrow. And then my ball is just going to continually move and move and move. Okay? So what I want to do is I'm not going to detect key up. What I want to do is if there's something blocking this ball, I want to be able to have it stop the ball. Okay, so what we're going to do, something that I haven't shown before, is use a Raycast. As opposed to a trigger event or a collision event, we're going to use a Raycast. So a ray is like a line that sticks out, and as soon as something hits that line, then we can trigger an action, okay, which is going to take us to another state. So let's go ahead and add a Raycast. So Raycast, so we're going to Raycast. And then again, we need to determine what is it that we're raycasting. So we're going to use specific game object, and we're going to use the ball. And then from position, this is, we're just going to leave that by default. And what it is it starts from the very center of the game object. Okay. So again, a ray is just a line, and if something pokes that line, that's when we're going to send an event. Okay, so in this case, if we look at the direction, we can determine what direction the ray is being cast. So if we know on this state that our ray cast is, or our ball is moving in the positive Z direction, we want to detect only a ray cast in that direction. So what I'm going to do is Z. So the number that I input here is the direction that we want to go. So we want to go in a positive direction. So this is going to be, okay, so we're going to stick 1 in there. So that's the direction that's the arrow is pointing, or the line is pointing. And then the space itself, the distance, this is important. Right now it's 100 meters long. We don't want it that long. We just want it to be a half of a unit. Okay, so our ball is 1 unit. So we want to detect half of that, because the raycast starts from the very center of that ball and then moves out. And our ball is 1, so it casts out half the distance. So what we're going to do is just type in 0.5. Okay, so we know we have a line going back, and it's 0.5 meters long, 0.5 units. And then hit event, so if it hits, we want to cause an action. Okay, so I don't have an event set up for this, and we'll just call this stop ball. Okay, so now that I have that in there, and we can go ahead and hit event stop ball. You don't have that transition set up, so let's go ahead and hit that. And then, so we've got the transition there, and now we go ahead and need to just drag off to a new state. And I'm going to call this stop ball. Okay, so now if we hit something, what we're going to do is to go off to the stop ball, and because this stop ball has no translate ball on it, the ball will stop. Okay, of course now we need to set up something for the ball to stop against or hit. So let's go ahead and set up a wall real quick. So I'm going to create a 3D game object of a cube. And I'm going to go ahead and just leave this 1 meter by 1 meter, and a box collider. Yes, we need to have a trigger, and I'm also going to go ahead and tag it. So we'll go ahead and tag it and add a tag of wall. And then we go back to our cube. I'm going to go ahead and just call this wall. And then we also need to tag it here. So tag it as wall. All right. And we've got, I think, everything set up, and let's just move this so that it's not directly on top of the ball. So let's just move it up our screen a little bit. So now what should happen is if our ball hits that wall, it should stop, because it's going to go off to the stop the ball state. Okay, so we hit the key, it's going to move up, it's going to then be continually moving the ball, and then as soon as the raycast hits the wall, it should go to this stop action that has nothing in it, so it just specifically stops the ball. Okay, so let's take a look, make sure we have everything set up. We have a hit event of stop ball, and we should be good. So let's go ahead and give this a test real quick. So I hit the up key. Boom, as soon as that raycast hits that wall, it stops it. There we go. So let's go ahead and set up the rest of our movements real quick. So we've got the base. So what I'm going to do is to copy this state, and I'm going to just paste it down. So that we're going to do one for down, left, and right. So we're going to change the names here. So instead of swipe up, we'll go swipe down. And then with swipe down, what we want to do is to move the ball, instead of a positive direction, we're going to move it in a negative direction per second every frame. And again, we also need to change our raycast. So instead of pointing to the back, we need to point it to the front. So instead of a positive Z direction, we want to do a negative Z direction. Okay, so that one's set up. So let's go ahead and add a new transition here. So swipe down, go to that swipe down event, and then stop ball, we can just go to the same stop ball event. Okay, so we've got that set up. So let's go to the next one. We'll have this be swipe left. Okay, and then left, if you remember, is a negative direction. So we need to go speed negative. And then again, it's a x-axis, and we need to do, instead of z-axis here, we need to do a negative number. So we're going to do a -1. So it's pointing to the left. And yep, that works. So let's go ahead and add a transition of swipe left. Move that over. Stop ball goes to stop ball. And then we need to set up our swipe right. And then with our swipe right, we're doing a positive, oops, this needs to be not on the Z axis, none. We're doing the X axis. So we're doing a positive X. And I need to just check my left here. And I got that set up as Z. We don't want the Z, we want the X. So we're doing a -X for our swipe left, a positive X for our swipe right. And then translate, instead of a Z axis, we're doing the X axis, a positive, so it's going to be a 1. And let's make a transition here. So add transition of right, drag that to our right state. Stop ball goes to stop ball. And then of course, after we swipe our ball, currently right now, I'm not getting back to detection. So I need to actually add a finish state to the detection or to the stop ball so that we can then go back to detection. So let's go add transition of finished. And once we're finished stopping the ball, we're going to go back to detect to see if somebody uses the input. So we've got a system set up here. So we're detecting if there's a key down input, then we're going to swipe down or swipe up, swipe down, left or right, moving the ball, and we're going to detect if the ball has hit something. Okay, so let's just make sure that we've got these all set up. So I have get key down, but only for the up arrow. So I need to actually add the 3 other keys here. So let's go ahead and add those in. So get key down of the down arrow, and then we're going to do swipe down. We're going to get key down of the left arrow and go to swipe left. Then we're going to do a get key down of the right arrow and do swipe right. Okay? So this is detecting all 4 of those keys. If somebody detects one of those, if we detect those keys, it's going to go to the appropriate one. So swipe up, we're going to do a translate of a Z in the positive direction. And then we're also raycasting in the Z positive direction. Swipe down, we're going to move the ball in a Z negative direction. Then also Z raycast in the negative direction. Swipe left, we're moving the X axis in the negative direction. And then we're also raycasting in the negative direction. Then the swipe right, Z axis or X axis in the positive direction, and raycasting X in the positive direction. Then all of those go to stop ball, which has nothing in it. So because the ball is not continually being translated, it stops. And then we're just going back to detection to listen for the get key inputs. Okay, so let me do this. I'm going to add another couple walls real quick just so we can move around. So add another wall. And let's just find that wall. And let's just move that down real quick. So what I'll do is I'll swipe up, swipe right, so the ball will be right here. So let's go ahead and add another one so I can just detect. And move that over one. So the ball will go up, hit this wall, come down. Add one more right there, and then the ball should, well, let's move that out further. There. So let's give this a test, and that should be able to detect to see if all of our stuff is working. So let's go ahead and hit play. So I'm going to first hit swipe up. So my up key, boom, it stops. We go to the next one. Boom, it stops. Go to the next one. Boom, it stops. And then I need to move that last one up just a little bit to get that in the right spot to make sure that we're stopping our ball. And let's move this to right here because then we'll be back at our original position. So let's give that a test real quick. There we go. So we've actually set up the base movement structure for a game similar to Roller Splat. Wow, another great tutorial. So in this particular tutorial, we developed the basis for the movement of the Roller Splat game. So we're moving the cursor left and right, up and down. And in this case, we're using our get key down actions. But that gets us the base for what this game structure can be like. In the next tutorial, we're gonna go ahead and start building out a couple levels. Again, please share these tutorials. And if you don't mind, hit like, subscribe, and that little bell icon down there so you know when the next tutorial is available. Until next time, peace.